The Navigation Canal wends its way from the sleepy market town of Louth across the Lincolnshire countryside by Austin Fen and Tetney Haven before crossing the salt marshes of the coastal plain to join the Humber estuary near the Humberston Fitters. Opened in 1770, it carried corn and wool from the farms of Lincolnshire, bringing coal from Yorkshire on the return journey. Closed in 1924 after the Great Flood, the lock gates have long since gone, often replaced by tilting weirs, but the remaining stretches, towpath and route of the canal, now conserved by the Louth Navigation Trust, has retained much of its integrity. We joined artist Trevor Bamford on the 11-mile journey to explore the beauty of this ancient waterway, which has been captured in a series of watercolour paintings and a beautifully illustrated book.
I was invited to exhibit at the Riverhead Theatre, and it seemed an obvious choice to me, given it's called the Riverhead Theatre, and I'd been sketching around the Riverhead warehouse where the Navigation Trust is based. I thought that it would be good to do a series of sketches illustrating both the state of the canal in its renovated state and talk a little in the book about the history of the canal. It is a subtle beauty, or has an extraordinary subtle beauty. It's a piece of industrial archaeology sitting in the countryside. And it's always struck me, since I first came to live in Louth, as being a marvellous subject for a series of paintings. So it seemed obvious to start the journey at the Riverhead area in Louth, where the two historic buildings, the former warehouses, stand, one of which accommodates the offices of the Navigation Trust, and thereon to illustrate various points along the navigation which were of either pictorial interest or historic interest or just nice views. The next point that I illustrated was the tilting weir, which replaces a former lock that would have been the sort of outlet, as it were, from the Riverhead area. Now it's a tilting weir, literally it tilts as a way of controlling the flow of water. And it was a fantastic, vibrant illustration, a challenge to catch. Illustrating running water is quite a challenge. I think I managed to illustrate something of the energy in the water in the illustration. The next subject I chose was to illustrate the curved walls here at Ticklepenny Lock. The curved walls are unusual, as I understand it, and they were quite, again, a bit of a challenge to illustrate, given there is brickwork in perspective working around a curve, and also the reflections of the brickwork in the water. After Ticklepenny Lock, I moved on to Lock Farm and the fascinating inverse siphon that is employed there, or was employed, to deliver water from one side of the canal to the other.
From the bridge at Albingham, you can look back along the canal and see the spire of St James Church in the distance. Ships would travel under sail or be towed by horses, leaving mast sails and lee boards at Tetney Lock to lighten the load. As we follow the towpath towards Austin Fen, the canal bends north at High Bridge, which was once a swing bridge, to allow the high-masted vessels to pass through. As we approach Austin Fen, Canal Farm, believed to have been built in the 19th century, can be seen on the western bank. At Austin Fen, the 18th century warehouse can be seen to the right of the bridge, which would once have had a turning basin and wharf for vessels serving the local community.
So now we're at Austin Fen. This is one of my favourite spots. I did two pictures here, one of the cottages further upstream, but I was quite taken with the view of this warehouse, which is an 18th century warehouse. It was built very early in the history of the canal. And just beyond the warehouse, which you can't see from here, is the slipway, which has opened up a new area of activity for paddleboarders and canoeists. But I was particularly taken, as I say, with the view of the warehouse, which is it's a listed building. But given the location, which is about halfway along the canal, there must have been a lot of activity, commercial activity, with local farmers shipping out grain from this point, and of course things like fertiliser being brought in for the use on the farms. The house you can see to the right, which has been recently renovated, was formerly a pub, and there were of course a number of public houses set along the banks of the navigation, and they would have served as meeting points for the various people who were either using the canal or providing services like towing boats from one point to another. They wouldn't tow them the whole length of the canal, they would do sections. And so this was almost like a posting house. If you're planning to visit the Louth Navigation, this is certainly one place not to miss. So here we are at Tetney Lock. The pub obviously was built at the time of the building of the canal and would have been to serve the workers on the canal, and it would have been a stage, like the other pubs along the canal, a sort of staging post. So this is where, if they needed a horse to pull a barge along, this is where they would pick one up, or drop off if they're going the other way. The bridge, the road bridge, which you can see now, was built I think in the 1960s, and it would have previously had been a swing bridge, enabling the masted ships to pass through obviously easily. So the lock itself is long gone. The name Tetney Lock remains. There is further along, as we go towards the coast, there is a tilting weir which controls the flow of water. Beyond, also over the other side of the bridge, is where we'd find the Coast Guard cottages. It seems strange to have Coast Guard cottages at a point which seems so far inland, but at the time they were built, the coast was much closer. Land drainage has extended the farmland, obviously put the coastline that bit further away. But the Coast Guard cottages still stand, along with a small Victorian chapel. Probably the last point of civilization if you're sailing out, or the first point if you're coming in, before you reach the Humber itself. What I discovered were a number of views along the navigation which might be worthy of representation, but it's always good to have some point of interest, and a point of human interest obviously is a dwelling or a barn or a warehouse. And I thought this was a particularly attractive arrangement of buildings beside the canal.
The tilting weir that replaced the original lock gates marks the end of the navigation canal, but the seawater channel continues its journey across the salt marshes of the coastal plain to join the estuary of the Humber River near the Humberston Fitters. Trevor's original watercolour paintings will be on display in the Hammond House Gallery in Louth during July, where you can also buy copies of his book with illustrations, maps and notes of places of interest along the way.